We're calling the February 11th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of the Village of Los Ranchos to order. It is 6 o'clock. So let's start. And we'll start off with a roll call, please. Okay, here we go. Commissioner Barrow.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Here.
Commissioner Edward.
Here.
Commissioner Baldwin.
Here.
Commissioner Tagliapetra.
Here.
Commissioner Haywood.
Here.
And Commissioner Homan here. Okay. So you have the agenda before you. Please take a quick look and review it. Are there any changes or updates to the agenda? Or a motion to approve?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And opposed? None. Okay. We should probably go through with an individual roll, but because of the online people. Okay, let's do it.
Eyebrow raise.
Let's do it. Commissioner Barrow.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez. Commissioner Edward.
Aye.
Commissioner Tagliapetra.
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood.
Yes.
And Commissioner Homan, yes.
And I'll just say yes too.
Oh, did I miss you? I'm so sorry. Okay, hopefully I will have without my only error. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with the public comment period. Residents may address the Planning and Zoning Commission to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Audience members will be given an opportunity to comment on the agenda items as they come up. Speakers must register with the village staff prior to the beginning of the meeting. And it looks like I have 2 people signed up. And when I call your name, if you'll please go to the podium and give your name and address. So I've got Jeff Morris first.
Good evening. Jeff Morris. I live at 517 Chavez Road, just down the road here. Thanks for your time. I wanted to bring some items up for consideration and some maybe recommendations that I'd like to put forth to the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider, especially when it comes to some of the changes that we've been experiencing recently here in the village. Specifically, my property backs up to Taft Middle School. My backyard and my property, that of my parents and my in-laws. We are right there with our properties backing up to Taft Middle School. I have lived here in the village for over 40 years. And with some of the concerns with the changes of the APS, and especially the loop that they're going to be putting forth, I have some big concerns with noise abatement, privacy concerns, and the traffic pattern flow, especially putting that much more traffic on the back end of my house. Specifically, what I'd like the commission to kind of look at is some of those safety concerns, some of those privacy concerns. Right now, not all of that back wall area is actually a solid wall. A lot of it is chain link fence. And with the additional traffic, with the additional foot traffic as well during the weekends, especially during events that I'm anticipating the school will have even more so, that'll be a big area, especially for me and my family. So I'd like to have the commission look at maybe changing or modifying, and if they haven't done it recently in past years, but to reconsider some of the zoning restrictions about putting up those walls in the back, maybe even increasing the height limits on there. I know some of those properties have different pools. That's also a safety concern. Hopefully the kids won't see it, want to jump the fence, etc. But maybe raising that up to 8 feet, allowing that solid wall to be built. I'd like to put a commission recommendation that it and not be just up for the residents to pay for, that APS look at maybe applying some funds to help with that. Also safety concerns for their own areas, making it a little bit more of a secure area. If they can't, obviously I don't want everything for free. I'm willing to put in some money myself as a private resident, but because it's a shared wall and a shared barrier, I'd like to have that increased. Already the trash trucks that come and dump at 6 a.m. are a hindrance and a noise issue, but with the frequency and the increased usage of those areas, it's going to happen more often. So I'd really like to consider that. Also along Chavez, speed is still a big concern. And I know that we've talked about that in past times, but the area between Guadalupe Trail and going up to 4th Street right along Chavez seems to be a little speedway. The speed limit there is not observed. There are some speed humps that are lower down on Chavez that I'd like to consider for the commission, especially with increased traffic going over to Taft, making that loop, going up Schulte and then down Chavez. That's going to be a big area for concern. I'd also kind of look at the front property. So right now in the front of our house along Chavez,
The speaker's
some
time has
restrictions.
expired.
Anyways, there's some restrictions. I do have some other questions. If you'd like, I can submit them on and then have you guys maybe address them that way.
That would be great if you would submit them, if you would please, to Mr. Avila.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person up is Mr. Denny Starner.
Yeah, Starner. Denny Starner, 521 Chavez Road. I am Mr. Morse's neighbor. So my property also, front of it is Chavez Road, and the back of my property is the Taft Middle School. I'll just, I know what he was going to say about the front is right now the restrictions in Los Ranchos is a 4-foot solid wall. Then you can go up to 6 feet, but you got to be able to see through it. It doesn't do much for noise abatement in that area. So we were talking, and I've been watching some of the meetings, and people get turned down on their variances, but there's a lot of things that have changed. And I think it's time that we put a committee or something together to look at the zoning. We just went through, Jeff and I sat in on the one for the DC area, or VC, I said DC, didn't I? The VC area a couple weeks ago, and that was enlightening, and I think we should do it for most all of them. I think Los Ranchos should be a place where we make, for our communities, a better place to live. And when you have a house that's really close to Chavez and you have that traffic going by, it's very noisy, even at night. So that's something I think we should look into. But the main reason I came up here, so I just wanted to finish up his comment about the front part and the wall. But in the back, and I have sent some emails to Taft Middle School about their lighting. So I looked into the lighting, and I'm fairly new to the area. I built a new house right beside his about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And I was looking at the dark skies, and it talks about outdoor light fixtures should be limited to 15 feet high, and there's no supposed to be any street lighting. Well, our whole back area is street lighting from Taft Middle School, and they're all above 15 feet high. And they were all supposed to be changed 2 years after October 27th, 2023, and they still exist. I've sent some emails to them, and they said that that's not their fault, it's not theirs, that P&M owns those lights. So they referred me to P&M. So I haven't went to P&M yet, but I also asked them about they have a auditorium, and they have these big windows that face south right into our backyards. And those lights are on all the time, even in the summertime when they're not, I don't know if it's for the janitors or whatever, but those lights, they just shine right into our backyards, and they're on all night long. They never addressed that. They didn't even make a comment on that, but they did talk about their outdoor lighting. So I just think that, I know they came and did a presentation, I think the last meeting, and they were talking about coming to bring people in the south side of the building. It's a lot
The
narrow.
speaker's time has expired.
So I just think we should do something about the codes and upgrading them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I saw someone had their hand up back there when I announced. Did you want to speak in the open comment period? I did. Okay, go ahead and approach, if you would please, and give us your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Vincent Sanchez. I live at 6802 Rio Grande. And I don't know if you remember last month, but I came in and I asked if you were familiar with your own zoning code, your residential zoning code. And I had cited section 9-11 R3 residential code. It's more or less cited in a couple other places. I haven't heard back anything about it in the concerns that I've brought up. And also the violation of New Mexico statutes as well. And it's something that I feel I'm being ignored about. And I originally had brought these issues up almost a year ago and publicly here last month, and to multiple zoning directors. So I think it's somewhat of an issue. And I don't know if you guys even have paid attention to that or not.
Who you need to address this with will be Mr. Avila. If you can please provide it to him, and we will ask Mr. Avila to report back to the commission at our next meeting.
Okay, that's what I was told last meeting, and I had, and he knows who I am, and I have spoken with him. So, and I know you guys are busy, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like saying I'm the only person that deserves any attention, but, you know, I think it's a big issue. Like, they're bringing up dark sky issues. I think that there's other issues around the village that are in a similar vein, and really what it all points to is not following the code that the village is saying that they're supposed to uphold, and they're not. So we keep trying to have, I don't know what the push is to make the village Albuquerque, but the value of the village comes from not being Albuquerque. And it is a constant battle, and it has been for decades here. And I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. Anybody who lives here, the only reason their property has more value than somebody in Albuquerque, just a couple miles away, is because it isn't Albuquerque. Stop making it Albuquerque. You know, I mean, how long has that lady been sleeping on the front of 4th Street in front of the bank? Like, there's simple things to take care of that are based on a small community that basically should know each other and know everybody in it and what's going on and what the rules are here. And it's not happening.
Thank you.
That's it.
Mr. Avila, can we please put that on next meeting's agenda? Okay. He has responded that it will be on our next agenda. Please let the record show that. All right. We will move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired in an item, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. So what we've got on it is the approval of the minutes for January 14th. Mr. Williams? The document that you just handed us appears to be the minutes from January 14th. Are these different than what was in the packet?
Madam Chair, thank you. Yes, ma'am, these are different. If you'll give me just a second, I'd like to discuss updates that have been made since the original release of the draft minutes. Attorney Chappell wanted me to give you just 2 minutes to peruse them and identify those changes, but I would rather, I'm joking, point them out to you.
Okay, before you start, let the record show that this was handed out to all of us. And instead, because this is the only item on our consent agenda, obviously it's going to turn into a discussion at this point.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
The minutes that were just passed out have been updated to reflect the following. The changes have been highlighted in yellow within the minutes. Deletions are in red text and struck through, while additions are bolded, or additions are underlined. But again, any changes are highlighted in yellow, so just ask you to key in on that. Page 2, line 29, it's concerning the vote. It was incorrectly recorded. It was a 5-0 vote with 2 abstentions. That has been noted and changed. Going forward to page 7, line 4, indicates Commissioner Barrow asked if a smaller shed would work has been added. Additionally, if you'll drop down on that same page, lines 15 through 21 have additions as well as a deletion for readability. Moving forward to page 16, line 31. We've Madam Chair, we've taken your name off and added Commissioner Baldwin, who was chairing at that point because you had recused yourself on that particular matter.
Excuse me, what was that one on?
Page 16, line 31.
Okay,
And then similarly, page 18, toward the top, line 9, the same update has been made there, just to indicate that Commissioner Baldwin was chairing that particular matter. And those are the updates, Madam Chair.
okay. Does anyone else have any updates? I know myself, I have 2.
I caught 2 of those, but he
Commissioner Barrow, go ahead.
I had caught 2 of those, but you have gotten them.
Okay. Anybody else before I give the 2? Okay, page 3, line 28. The word deference should be difference.
Oh, good, good.
And then page 8, line 27, it should read Commissioner Homan asked Mr. Williams to shed some light on the FAR. So strike the applicant and change it to Mr. Williams. Okay, with those changes, is there any further discussion or a motion to adopt?
Question. I can only vote on part of it. Do I vote on all of it or none of it? Commissioner Homan
Madam
and I.
Chair and Commissioner Barrow, I think because it's a non-controversial item that you're not really making any substantive decisions, a procedural matter, you can vote on the entire matter.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
I move we approve the minutes as distributed
And amended?
with the amendments as shown and added by Commissioner Homan.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, let's go through the roll call. Commissioner Barrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Edward?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
Commissioner Homan, yes. Okay. Motion passes, and we'll move on to the public hearings. Before we get started with the public hearings, Mr. Chappell, can you swear in anybody that is going to speak on any matter that is on our agenda tonight? There are 3 public hearings and applications.
Anybody that's going to testify, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth and the penalty of perjury?
Thank you, Mr. Chappell. Okay, the first item on our public hearings and applications is V2501, which is a request by, I don't know how do you say your name? Miss Mullen, agent for Bree Lovelady, for a variance of 3 feet 7 inches to the required 15-foot side yard setback distance to allow a proposed building addition to be just 11 feet 5 inches from the western property line for the property located at 1028 Green Valley Road Northwest, zoned A1 agricultural/residential, and legally described as Lot A, lands of Connie Lovelady Rappaport. The subject site contains approximately 1.0056 acres in area, more or less. Mr. Williams, will you provide us with your presentation?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. For the record, my name is Brennan Williams. I am a private consultant assisting the Planning and Zoning Department on planning and zoning matters. We'll be presenting this particular item as well as the other two items that are public hearings tonight. Madam Chair, as you mentioned, this particular request, V2501, pertains to property located at 1028 Green Valley Road Northwest, site zoned A1, and it's just over an acre in area. The property owner in this particular request is asking for a variance of 3 feet 7 inches to the required 15-foot side yard setback distance. This request is being made prior to a future application for building permits to allow for additions to an existing dwelling unit that's on the property. And 2 of those additions on the west side of the home will be located within that 15-foot side yard setback distance, specifically at a distance just 11 feet 5 inches from that property line. The applicant has indicated in their written justification that they believe their request meets the unnecessary hardship criterion outlined within the zoning code, specifically referencing standards number 1 and number 3. They note that the existing development on lots to the west of the subject site are accessed by a driveway along the eastern portion of those lots, and that there's an existing home on the lot furthest to the south that's addressed at 1030 Green Valley Road that appears to not meet the current 15-foot side yard setback distance. They argue that the subject property is unusually narrow and that the topography of the lot causes water to drain towards the east side of the property. They also state that the location and the scale of the additions to the home will match the existing design of the house, that those additions will not be easily seen from the public street, and they feel that they'll be visually appealing to the neighbors to the west who would arguably have a view of those additions. And finally, they argue that the encroachment into the setback area is limited to just about total of 75 square feet. Staff understands those arguments, but has concluded that they don't meet the specific criteria for approval. I'll break down each argument very quickly, but the driveway along the eastern side of the property, I think that was brought to our attention to argue that this inherently creates a setback or a separation distance from the property line because cars, they'll need the driveway to access the property. Again, that's understood, but the code is very clear about how setback distances are measured, and they're measured from a property line, not from, say, a driveway. We did confirm that there's an existing building on the adjacent lot that does appear to be located in the setback area. Was able to confirm that conditional use approval was granted back in 1988. There is not a site plan that was associated with that conditional use approval for a guest house. So I don't know if the house was allowed to be placed there as part of the procedure for the conditional use, which is not the procedure that's used today, or if it was somehow approved erroneously or it was unpermitted construction. But in any case, the code is specific that encroachments on other properties, whether they're granted by a variance or not, is not justification to, or is not valid to justify a variance for the subject site. The statements made regarding the narrowness and the topography of the property also don't seem to be applicable. The subject site is approximately 112 feet in width. This exceeds the 75-foot lot width requirement for the A1 zone. And just some rudimentary measurements for other properties specifically to the northeast of the subject site appear to show developed lots that are more narrow than the subject site, and those are at 949, 1007, and 1009 Green Valley Road. Additionally, it appears that the topography on those lots is very similar to the subject site. Madam Chair, Commissioners, because of those facts, we are recommending, the department's recommending denial of V2501. Findings for that begin toward the middle of page 4 of the staff report. However, at the top of page 5, should the commission deem that the request should be approved, there are suggested findings and conditions, again, that are listed at the top of page 5. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Williams? Okay, seeing and hearing, what? Oh, okay.
Is the applicant going to speak?
That'll be next.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and have the applicant come to the podium. Please provide your name and address, and you can give us an overview or point out anything you would like to emphasize.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. We are pleased to be here to present to you.
Your
Get
name and
this
address,
just right.
please.
My name is Maya Mullen. I'm the agent for Bree Lovelady, the owner of 1028 Green Valley. I appreciate Mr. Williams' astute evaluation of our initial application. Of course, we did this with great rigor. We're trying to put our ducks in order before we put in for a building permit, as Mr. Williams indicated. I think in my heart, I'm an architect, of course. What we're standing here and asking for is a small exception, and that perhaps the justification 5 would be our best bet. And we don't say this lightly. Again, I am an architect. I served 8 years on the Albuquerque Planning and Zoning Commission. Ms. Lovelady has lived in the village with her family for over 30 years. We want to support the spirit of the village, not of the city, just a little shout out, but recognizing that the spirit of the village has been built over years of careful development, and I say that with lowercase, beautiful homes set amongst beautiful landscapes, carefully making sure that we don't overbuild, that we don't encroach upon the right-of-way and the public way, and being very cognizant of beautiful design and architectural modifications. I'm very biased, but I would plead with you to make this exception. As Mr. Williams indicated, this is less than 70 square feet. We're doing 2 little bump outs. And I know that's not a technical architectural term, but it means we were trying to break up the facade of where we're putting the addition in. We also tucked it behind a garage that sits prominent on her property. It is a long, narrow property, and I actually have some photographs and a couple site plans that I could hand out, but I know that within your staff report you received them. But if I may approach the bench, I can give you a couple quick visuals.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm looking at.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you very much.
It's right here.
So I'm not going to review the points again that Mr. Williams went through, but what I would like to call your attention to is on this long property, and again, I understand that's not a direct justification, but if you look at the second page, we have a photograph of the property from the street. As you can see, with these two small bump outs, they're almost not detectable from a street point of view. I would argue that this is not going to deteriorate the fabric of her block or the neighborhood. Furthermore, recognizing this permanent easement, and again, that is outside this direct jurisdiction, but it's almost like a side street. So coming up that side street, that easement to those other 3 properties, to break up the facade of her house, and to do this tastefully and to maintain the architectural style of her home actually creates a more pleasing addition than just this kind of straight extruded addition or infill. between the garage and the house. And so I just, with respect for the village character, respect for my client, respect for, I understand the commission's purview is not to create a precedent, right, where others can come in and then use our project as a justification. But since we're dealing with such a minute square footage addition in other municipalities, there's a certain threshold that we wouldn't even have to apply for a variance. And this is 2% of the overall square footage of our home. And again, it was in this effort to break up the facade and actually make it more pleasing, not onerous on the village. And so with respect, we're asking for exception number 5 and that our variance be granted for this addition. And I would stand for any questions.
Are there questions among the commissioners?
I have some. What's actually within the footprint
So
of the part that is being placed within the setback?
that's an excellent question, Commissioner. We are putting in a master bedroom, an addition, so the 2 little bump outs are some square footage onto the actual formal bedroom, and then the one that's farther south, so the one north is the bedroom, and the one south is the bathroom attached to it. This house currently is a 3-bedroom, and not that that's of any issue, but it was designed in a time and an era where there wasn't a master bedroom. So it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, so this creates a master suite separate from the existing bedroom wing, which is along the eastern edge.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
I have one other question. There was some discussion about the differences in the site property elevation. I was unclear as to what that meant to approving or not approving this.
I appreciate that question as well. I didn't dwell on it because I wanted to respect the report that was submitted before I came to speak. But although a relatively flat site, as much of Los Ranchos is, in point of fact, the ground is higher along the western edge. And so when there are big rains or when she flood irrigates the front portion of her property, the water tends to pool back towards the existing house and the eastern side of the property. I only bring that up, it's perhaps a hardship, perhaps not, but I did provide a photograph in our packet that we're gonna have to mitigate moisture issues with the slab because it's wicking so much moisture that her wood floors are warping. And so it is our attempt to build on relative high ground. We're not talking 4 feet high, but it only takes 1/8 of an inch over a foot for water to properly drain. And so even if we can gain a foot or 2 along the western edge of our house and maintain the same construction method, which is slab on grade, as opposed to having an elevated or something with footings where water can go beneath, we are trying to mitigate more moisture issues within our house and not build along the eastern edge where it's wetter.
So I will ask a question. So you've mentioned, and actually have emphasized that this is more, these 2 bump outs are more for aesthetics. But quite frankly, the only place that somebody's going to really be able to realize those aesthetics is if they are standing on that side of the house, which is only that 15-foot
But
depth.
there's that permanent driveway. There's a driveway that accesses 3 different properties up the western side of her property. So that's no longer one sole owner, that's a subdivided property. And so, it's almost like she has a corner. And then just quite honestly, how we're treating it, we're putting on new brick and whatnot, that it just, the overall aesthetic of our house is being improved. And by not just moving in and out and undulating, in my opinion, is a more architectural treatment. It's not that it's a gift, to the people walking down the street, but that it's a very thoughtful addition to the house.
So functionally on the house, from a functional standpoint, it's really doesn't create that big a difference, correct?
I would be honest with you in that the addition on the bathroom, which is the southern bump out, not a big deal. In the master area, it does create a more functional master bedroom.
Mr. Baldwin?
So following up on that, if I look at the materials that were provided in the packet, which is similar to
Right.
what you shared with us, you have a bump in the middle of the front of the house. And then you have a bump to the, two bumps to the side. That bump in the middle of the house extends a certain distance that appears to be sort of in alignment parallel to the width of the addition. Did you give any consideration to the design creating that bump on the inside, not on
Moving
the
it into-
outside?
I did, as a matter of fact, and that is a very good question. There are the two foundations from the house to the garage, and that's what I'm assuming, that you're talking, could we have done this bump going east? Correct? So the house and the garage do not align, those two walls. And so we have two kind of esoteric foundation and footings in there. And so to build 3 foot onto that and join up on two jogging footings is a little bit more, it's a harder thing to do than to hold back from it and go into an area where I'm not going to compete with other footings.
If I look at it, though, that garage, right, is in alignment with this, except for that bump out. So it would find footings on either side. I'm just saying, if that bump were on this side,
So I wish I had brought the actual floor plan. This is diagrammatic. The floor plan of the house and of the garage, how the footings go, there's a weird jog and actually a bump out that is not shown in these kind of diagrammatic blocks. And so I apologize that I don't have a finer grain, but that we did examine what if we build in towards the eastern side and into that.
so if I understand, just to follow up, make sure I understand, it was that there are challenges with that, not that there is somehow, I'm looking at the area of water pooling that you've marked, and again, there's a bump out that extends a certain amount, not way into where that is written. So it is a design challenge
Yes.
that is the reason why you put it to the other side.
A design challenge, a construction challenge, yes. It was kind of weighing certain considerations, and I understand it's your purview to weigh in on the village considerations, and then there were other constructability considerations.
But there's nothing, I mean, it would be a challenge. There is nothing that makes it an impossibility. It's a challenge, which I understand. I just
Yes,
wanna make
and
sure I
there's roof
understand.
lines coming in, there's a valley that comes into that point. Like in terms of a easy, kind of beautiful aesthetic continuation of the gable roof that's coming off of the garage and meeting the corner of a double gable on the main house, and then doing a 3-foot bump out there and figuring out where two slopes are coming in. Yes, a challenge and a bit of a nightmare addition, in my opinion. It's a much more seamless addition if we pull it away from the house and are free of those two roof lines.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Do we have letters from the neighbors? Any communication from immediate property owners?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, no, there have been no letters of support. However, that is not part of the criteria as it relates to consideration of a variance. So they're not required. I don't know if Ms. Mullen knows or is aware of efforts that the property owner has made with their neighbors, but again, there's nothing in the packet, nor is there a requirement for that.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience that's wanting to speak in support of this? I have a sign up, but there's been nobody that signed up. Mr. Sanchez, you wanted to speak in favor? Okay. If you will approach the podium, give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes for your statement. Were you sworn in? Were you,
I wasn't, because I didn't know anything about this one.
Mr. Chappell? Will you please swear Mr. Sanchez in?
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Okay. My name is Vincent Sanchez, and I'm at 6802 Rio Grande. I'm actually a neighbor of this, and Miss Lovelady is? Lovelady's the owner? Okay. So this is kind of exactly something like I hear, I don't know what your decision is going to be about this. I hear the zoning director, for lack of a better term, he says he's against it. This is something that I see as like kind of in vein of the village. There's a small piece of property that's old and has been this way for a long time, and they want to make small changes that don't affect anything in my mind, and they're asking permission for it. The problem that I bring up is unpermitted, unvariance issues that people didn't go through this process, and they get to do what they want, and I've been complaining about it for a year. These people are asking permission for something completely reasonable, in my view. So I think you should take that kind of thing into consideration. I've seen denials in all of the last meetings that I've attended and watched, and I think that they are, in a lot of cases, completely ridiculous. And I think this is one where this affects nobody, and it only makes their place better. And you know, maybe I just don't know enough about the whole situation, but as a neighbor, I'm for it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak against this proposal? Seeing and hearing nobody. Is there further discussion from
Could
the
I,
commission?
kindly, could I make one more comment? Are you ready to make your?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I would say, you know, in the city of Albuquerque, and again, we're talking about apples and oranges, and I respect that, but often side yard setbacks are 5 feet. Those are largely driven by easements for utilities. That is not the issue in the village because of where you guys have chosen to run your utilities within the roadway. The 15-foot easement is in a spirit of emergency access. And so although Mr. Williams found the adjoining property to the west to not have an impact on this, I actually feel like it does, and I would respectfully like to disagree, because we have a permanent easement to access that farthest southern building on that western property. Those same emergency vehicles could come up and access Miss Lovelady's property. So if the spirit of a 15-foot easement is access, then we have met that criteria, and this 3'7" encroachment does not change or impact it negatively.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're into commissioner discussion.
We need a motion before we can discuss, I believe.
So there is no wall or fence constructed where that black dash line on the property line is?
That black dashed line indicates a property line.
Right, but that's pavement from the edge of the house all the way over to the west, where it says affected square footage variance on the photo that you provided.
The affected first footage for variance is pointing out the two little bump out areas.
Right, but that area there, it looks like there's pavement running from the edge of the house all the way over to where those words affected square foot.
I think he's asking the heavy dashed line,
Is a property line.
just a property line, there's no fencing at all?
There's a permeable fencing there separating her property from the 3 properties to the west.
Up front.
For most of it, but and then it goes to solid.
Would you please approach and provide your name, address, and then you can add your comment to the record, please? She was. You stood and were sworn in, correct?
I did not.
Oh, I thought you were.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do. So,
If you'll provide your name and address, please.
my name is Bree Lovelady, and I live at 1028 Green Valley Road.
Speak into the mic.
My name is Bree Lovelady, and I live at 1028 Green Valley Road. So there is a fence surrounding most of my property. Where are we on this thing? Okay. So between my property and I think 1030, Bill Swope's property, there is a solid fence that runs the entire property line until about, I don't know, what is that?
That's about right, that's where your fence comes in, so it's just
Right,
shy of
and then the
where-
rest is a permeable chain link fence to the street.
So this graphic is accurate.
I think what Mr.
Excuse-
Edwards is kind of
yeah.
asking is that earlier you had made a mention of that the ability for emergency vehicles to come in and access that side was his question. If there was a permanent wall there, it wouldn't. And I think that's where your question was coming from, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the permanent wall only extends to the edge of Bill Swope's, like, drive. It's an, go ahead.
Yeah, the dashed white line that I have saying that solid wall, it is almost, I mean, diagram, give or take 12 inches. Again, this is, so the entire length of the permanent easement and driveway running up could still access Ms. Lovelady's property.
And the permeable wall that you're talking about, is it chain link? What is it? And is there a gate there that's readily accessed? Because if there is an emergency and it has to be accessed, we certainly don't want the emergency vehicle having to, you know, try to break down a fence. So,
It's a wired fence. with
It's a
posts.
chain link fence, and
But
if
no
it would
gates?
be the commission's desire that we put in a gate there, as long as her neighbors would be open to it, I don't think that would be a deal breaker. Of course, anytime a fence is in consideration, we would want to reach out, and we'd be happy to reach out and get that agreement, if that would make this, I don't think that's an unreasonable request to provide access in there.
is there any other questions for the applicant, Ms. Lovelady? Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we are down to commissioners' discussion.
Thank you.
Is there a motion that can kick us into a discussion?
Yes, for the purposes of discussion, I move the denial of V2501, a request for variance of 3 feet 7 inches to the required 15-foot side setback distance allowance to allow proposed building additions to be located just 11 feet 5 inches from the west property line for the property located at 1028 Green Valley Road Northwest, zoned A1 agricultural residential within the Guadalupe Trail character area with the staff findings.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, commissioners' discussion. Commissioner Barrow?
Yes. Listening to this and seeing that the encroachments are on basically open space, the permanent driveway easement, I'm less inclined to deny them. So I will be voting against this motion. I am in favor of granting.
Further? Commissioner Baldwin?
You know, I'm going to be a squeaky wheel on this. I wish we could get back to the work sessions that we had started to deal with setbacks. There are real issues around health, life, safety, and access, and there are also very simple issues related to, this is a village that is stuffed full of non-conforming setbacks. And at some point, we have got to try to true it up and do it based on rationality. Like, okay, what really is a side setback? And maybe those side setbacks need to be different in an R2, an R3 versus an A1. Maybe not. I wish we had that work in the rearview mirror and we'd already done it and we could be looking at things like this and say, you know, our magic wand is all those non-conforming become conforming and then we have very few variances. But I don't get to roll the Wayback Machine. And it is the zone that we have that is pretty clear about what it takes to meet a hardship criteria. I wish it was more flexible. I get that, in other places, there's a certain like wiggle room, but then the wiggle room gets wiggle room, And so we have to do that work that is necessary to get this village code trued up in any number of areas. We have talked about this repeatedly, about the areas that need some work ASAP. And I wish it had been done. It has not been done yet. And so based on the information in front of us, I think that the staff's recommendation is appropriate, and it frustrates the heck out of me.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? Okay, with that, we'll call the question. And this is once again a roll call vote. The motion has been placed before us to deny the application. It was moved and seconded, and we've concluded our discussion. So roll call vote, Commissioner Barrow?
No.
Commissioner Martinez?
No.
Commissioner Edward?
Yes means we approve the denial?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
Commissioner Homan, yes. I am sorry, but your application has been denied. The variance request V2509, a request by Maya Mullen, agent for Bree Lovelace, for a variance of 3 foot 7 inches to the required 15-foot side setback on the property at 1028 Green Valley Road has been denied. The hearing on this has been closed now. Okay, we'll go on to our next item. Yeah, I'm trying to get to it. There we go. V2502 is the next item. It's a request by Andrew McGivern and Avery Bingham for a variance of 0.482 acres to the required 1 acre lot size requirement for a proposed lot for property located at 8422 Rio Grande Boulevard Northwest, zoned A1 agricultural residential and legally described as tracts 40A1, 40B1, 40B2, and 47A, MRGCD map number 25. The subject site contains approximately 0.9518 acres in area, more or less. Mr. Williams, will you give us the planning report?
Madam Chair, thank you. Again, for the record, my name is Brennan Williams. Item 4B tonight is a public hearing. It's a variance, V2502. Madam Chair, as you gave the particulars, the applicant is the property owner in this particular matter, and they're requesting a variance of 0.0482 acres. That works out to be 2,100 square feet to the 1 acre lot size requirement to allow for future lot consolidation of 4 existing MRGCD tracts. They wish to take those 4 parcels, those 4 tracts, and combine them into a single piece of property. The applicant indicates in their written explanation that that the variance meets the applicable criteria of the code because the property existed in its current configuration prior to the existing 1 acre lot size requirement. And secondly, that no reasonable use can be made of the land without the granting of a variance. And staff agrees with them. The explanation that's made by the applicants does meet the criteria for approval in staff's opinion. Specifically, MRGCD tracts are outlined in village code under their own specific ordinance. And the purpose of MRGCD tracts, just to give you a little bit of background, these are tracts that were created specifically for the administrating of water rights and delivery of water to certain tracts that are within the district. These tracts were not created by subdivision through government approval, but for the most part, they have been used simply for property conveyances. Those actions took place or culminated ultimately in 1967. the current 1 acre lot size requirements went into effect in 1972. Those were adopted by the Board of Trustees under ordinance number 25. So as a result, the existing 4 tracts that make up the subject property are non-conforming to current standards. So that's one limitation on the property. Additionally, section 9.4.3C of that MRGCD tract ordinances allows for existing single-family homes to remain on conservancy tracts, but it does not allow an expansion of the size or the intensity of the use unless the tracts are replatted according to the standards of the village subdivision ordinance. It's believed that these restrictions, staff believes that these restrictions and conditions not only existed when the provisions went into effect, but it meets the unnecessary hardship criteria outlined in criterion number 2 under the unnecessary hardship section. Secondly, the unnecessary hardship standard is further demonstrated because these circumstances have created a condition where no reasonable use can be made of the land without the requested variance. The applicant, as I mentioned, is interested in consolidating these 4 existing tracts into a single parcel. 2 of the tracts to the further to the west end of the site actually go through the middle of the existing home that's there. Based on village standards, the owner is not able to pull permits, make any additions, put in a swimming pool or a barn or anything of that nature until these property lines have been properly adjusted. So by that, by those standards, those limitations, again, staff also feels that the unnecessary hardship criteria demonstrated that no reasonable use of the property can be made is achieved. Because of that, on page 4 of your staff report, you'll see that there's a recommendation for approval of V2502, and there are 3 findings that are listed there at the middle of the page that support that recommendation. With that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for any questions.
Are there questions of Mr. Brennan? Okay, seeing and hearing none, is the applicants, are they here? Would you please approach the podium, provide your name and address and your comments or questions?
Sure, thanks for having us. Andrew McGibbon, 8422 Rio Grande.
Avery Bingham, 8422 Rio Grande.
Thanks for having us tonight. Mr. Williams did a great job of explaining what we're after, but the idea is basically that unfortunately the almost acre that we have is deemed useless at the moment because of the way that the plots are lined up from the 60s. Really wasn't, I guess, put together in mind of building or having a home there or anything else like that. So like he said, we would like to put in a 4-foot closet because the home was built really without closets, and in order for us to live there, we've been trying to move in for quite some time, but without closets or a place to put clothes, it's, been a little tough to move in there yet. So even to do something simple like that, it's been impossible because we have almost an acre of land and it's impossible to do anything with any of it. So we talked to some people. I know that property has been for sale for a long time. We recently purchased it a couple years ago, and we ended up finding people who were interested in buying it over the years, and they were actually wanting to keep the 4 lots so that they could develop and build hopefully 4 homes on it. I feel like we are doing the opposite of that and trying to do more of what the village is intending for what the village is supposed to be. We're trying to make it one large lot, make it ours for our family, and make it usable, if you will. So obviously we hope that you guys can help us to make it usable, and so we can do things with it and be able to move in and live there and hopefully make the village our home and a much better place.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Edwards.
Your good questions usually bring up their good questions.
There you go. I drive by this property a lot, and I guess my first question is, what prompted the hearing for this today? Was it because they were doing construction work and an inspector went out there and tagged them? How did they lead to us today?
Mr. Williams?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, Mr. McGibbon can correct me or refresh my memory. I believe I first learned of this particular situation as he was interested in coming through the plating process, the village subdivision ordinance. And at some point, I don't remember if it was Director Rubin, I believe it was Director Rubin, was advising him, and he was working with his surveyor to get the plat laid out accordingly. It was at some point within the last 3 months that we realized that we need to get the variance before they've done a considerable amount of work toward the platting action, but we can't move forward on that until the lot size variance matter is addressed.
Can I chime in to help with that?
Please.
We started the plating process almost 2 years ago, understanding that that was going to be an issue that we needed to work on. Unfortunately, I had to call 5 or 6 surveyors to find somebody who would do it. They were all so busy and didn't want to mess with it. I found somebody who would. Unfortunately, they took a 1.5 years plus to finish it, which is why we're now here and not here a long time ago. So it's as much a heartache on me as it is on you, believe me. So we started doing small things in the house, renovating, putting flooring in, painting, small things. And there was a concrete pad with an exterior door there where that building is. And so we thought with that there, that would make a nice place for a closet. There's already an opening in the wall. There's already some concrete there. So we started framing it in. Yes, we got a call saying, not allowed until you get your replatting done. So we stopped construction, had to stop where we were at, haven't touched it since, and waiting for this process to be done so that we can continue on with finishing that closet and moving on with plans.
And this is the intent that you're consolidating the 4 into 1 and not later to come in and subdivide into 2 or 3 later?
That's correct. We do not plan on subdividing at all.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions from the commissioners? Okay. Is there anybody wanting to speak in favor of this proposal? Nobody has signed up, but is there anybody wanting to speak against this proposal? Okay. Is there anybody online that is waiting? No? Great. All right. So we're back to just commission discussion. We need a motion first, though?
I make a motion to approve V 2502.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Commissioner discussion. Yes, Ms. Commissioner Baldwin?
We struggle so often with how to interpret the hardship portions of our code. This is what they were written for. And it is very clear that the terms are met. You literally cannot do anything
Literally can't do a
with
thing.
your property until this gets resolved. And even if you tried to go through the platting, it can't get replatted unless there is a variance. You literally have no economic purpose for your property without it. So with that, I wholeheartedly support this variance.
Further comments?
This was an easy one.
I'm in support of it. I did have a question, and I don't know if this is
We're
actually
past
part of.
that, yeah, we're past that.
I just want to make sure that it has access to ditch water. And that's probably not a part of this, but I hope it does in the future.
I'm sorry, ditch water. My understanding is that our neighbors have access to ditch water, and we also are a part of the MRGCD and have been paying taxes to continue that, even though there is no ditch there. So my understanding, that I haven't gone there yet, is to see that I believe we can get ditch access brought to our property. Obviously, if we pay for that and get that done, I believe we have the ability to do that, but at the moment, there is no ditch direct access on the property yet. But both properties to our east and south both have that.
Any further? I'll call the question. So it has been moved, seconded, and we've had our discussion regarding approval of this application V 2502. We'll go through Commissioners Roll call vote. Commissioner Barrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Edward?
Yes.
Commissioner Tegla-Petra?
Yes, and
Commissioner Hay-
congratulations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haywood?
Yes.
And Commissioner Homan, yes. Commissioner Baldwin, dang it, and I have the list
And
here.
yes.
Commissioner Baldwin, officially.
I know, I just, maybe it's the
Yeah, I
glasses.
don't know what the deal is. I'm so worried about trying to pronounce her name. My apologies. So with that, it has passed unanimously. Congratulations, your variance request has been approved.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's get to the next one. Let's see. I don't know what page it starts on. Hold on. Here we go. Oh, so officially, the V2502 hearing has concluded. So we're on to the hearing on CU 2501, which is a request by Studio Southwest Architects, agent for Clover Holdings LLC, for a conditional use permit, for conditional use approval to allow a school for the property located at 220 El Pueblo Road Northwest, zoned GD Gateway District, and legally described as Tract A1 of the plat for Tracts A1 and A2, Alameda Bible Church home of Victory Christian School subdivision. The subject site contains approximately 1.72 acres in area, more or less. Mr. Williams, will you provide us the planning report?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you again. For the record, my name is Brennan Williams. Madam Chair, as you mentioned, this is a request for conditional use approval for a school. The subject property is the southwest corner of El Pueblo and 2nd Street here in the village. The request for a school is proposed. The applicant intends to utilize an existing 13,110 square foot, 2-story building as a Montessori school for elementary and middle school age students. The applicant has noted that the property was previously used as a school for about 20 years. And I think it was in about 2020, they can correct me if my dates are wrong, that use ceased. So they're looking to reinstitute that particular use. They are proposing some interior modifications to the school building, but ultimately will include classrooms, administrative offices, a conference room, cafeteria, and the property will also provide some outdoor recreation areas for the students. They're proposing off-street parking spaces as well as a looped vehicular queuing lane for student drop-off and pickup. Village records indicate that the property was annexed into the village in June of 2003 through ordinance number 179. And a review of historical aerial photographs of the property indicate that the existing building and the general layout of the property has not changed since it was annexed in 2003. Staff has noted, comments begin in the middle of page 2 of your staff report, but staff has noted that a school is an anticipated expected use. It's conditional, but it is an expected use in the Gateway District zone. The applicable criteria outlined for conditional use approval indicates that conditions may be imposed on any approval to ensure that the school will be in conformance with the master plan and will not have an adverse impact upon nearby properties, the neighborhood, or the village. Staff is of the belief that the prior use of the subject site as a school helps to demonstrate that the existing development, the current layout, and the overall size and shape of the property are characteristics which lean toward authorization or approval of the request. Similarly, other development standards of the Comprehensive Zoning Code were looked at, specifically off-street parking. The code requires that 3 parking spaces be provided for each classroom for a property used for a school. The applicant is proposing 13 classrooms inside the existing building. That works out to 39 required spaces, 39 required spaces, and they are providing 82 off-street parking spaces. So they well exceed the parking requirements. and 2 of those parking spaces will be designated for use by physically challenged motorists. Because of those factors, staff is recommending approval. That begins the middle of page 3 of your staff report with 3 findings that are listed there. With that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions of the commissioners for Mr. Williams? Commissioner Martinez?
One of the questions that we've been dealing with in the village of Los Ranchos with these school systems is traffic. And has there been any kind of traffic study relating to the already existing overburden on traffic in the area? And if so, that's my only concern. And it's not that I'm against it. It's just that traffic has been a process that the more that comes in, the more that comes out, the traffic is just overburdening. And as you well know, with 40 spaces, that's my question.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Martinez, the short answer is yes. The agent will, we've been in communication. They have looked into the traffic issue. Additionally, I just want to bring to the Commission's attention that the intersection itself is outside of the village limits. It's actually in the county. But there has been discussion between the village, the county, elected officials, as well as the New Mexico Department of Transportation about improvements and changes to that intersection to deal with some of the issues that are there. So long story short, they're aware, they meaning the state is aware of that. There are concerns about how the intersection will be laid out in order to make it as safe as possible or as easy to navigate as possible. But again, I am aware that the agent has been working on that and would give them the opportunity to fill in the details on that.
Just to follow up on that, because of it being out of our ability, the village of Los Ranchos, is there any kind of ability to place the need for a traffic report or study? I'm just concerned that I appreciate what you're saying, and they are on board with other entities. But the question being is, at the end of the story, once we give them approval, that doesn't have to be met. And that's my little bit of a concern, that do we have any ability from the village or from us as commissioners to be able to allow that to be a concern and or something added to this, that the traffic is something that should be looked at and added to what we're doing right here?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, as it relates to the intersection, I think the short answer would be no. We can't place conditions on areas outside of the village.
Okay.
But certainly, as a commission entertaining a request for conditional use approval for a school on this particular property, there can be conditions that are established as it relates to how traffic comes in or out of that site, if I'm making sense. And I would also advise that if the commission feels that there are too many questions or there are questions that need to be answered outside of the public hearing or that can't be answered in this particular public hearing, it certainly would be appropriate to defer or continue the matter if the commission determined that there were specific details that were still needed.
Okay. Commissioner Tagliapietra.
I have a question. Could we mandate the westernmost gate to be the entrance and the easternmost gate to be the exit? Thank you. That takes it further from the intersection.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You didn't have to answer, Mr. Williams.
Is there any other questions right now before we call the applicants up?
Just a quick
Commissioner
question.
Baldwin?
So, Mr. Williams, the timing of, so you had said that there was some movement on that really, really, really bad, intersection, Second El Pueblo, coming off of, Del Norte. But that's outside the village. But you mentioned that there was some movement maybe to make some improvements, or the New Mexico DOT, or, that there was some activity going on. Do you have a sense of, is that related to this legislative session? Is that imminent? Is that just a thought and musing?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Baldwin, good question. Horrible answer. I don't know. My understanding is that the parties, the influential parties are aware of the problem and are working toward making improvements. What those improvements are, or what the timeline for those improvements are, I don't think have been nailed down yet. But again, I do know that the county, the state, the village, DOT, legislators are all aware of that, and I would imagine continue to get complaints, so it's not something that's just going to go away.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edward?
I have a couple questions. What is the mission of the Gateway zoned area for the village?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, give me just a second, please. I took my code home, and guess what I left at the house today?
All right. I should have read it myself.
Okay, I apologize. So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, the purpose of the Gateway District, referred to as the GD zone, is to encourage the development of transit-supported mixed-use neighborhoods of commercial and residential uses that fosters pedestrian activity and a sense of community. It recognizes the importance of linkages to the broader community and the importance of public transit as a viable alternative to the automobile by providing appropriate densities and land uses within walking distance of bus terminals, bike and pedestrian formal trails, the Rail Runner Los Ranchos Journal Center, as well as the Railroad Los Ranchos Journal Center. It is the intent of the GD zone to focus on maintaining village style, scale, and character. The Gateway District zone will permit both commercial and residential uses on the same lot or tract.
Okay.
All right. So this was originally the Yanamoto's
Way long ago.
nursery site. And I guess from a retail standpoint, they likely had a greater traffic impact from, I guess, 9 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. Would that be a stretch?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, I'm not familiar with the business or the operation that you're referring to, but I think many times the argument can be made if one use is perceived to be more traffic intensive than another, or the use itself is more intense than something coming in or something being proposed, that there's some flexibility in the consideration. That being said, one of the responsibilities of this commission as you're making a decision is to determine if, in this case, the school will be injurious to the community, and what may have been there before may not be pertinent to the consideration of what's coming in now. Things change, development increases, there's more traffic, there's less traffic, things of that nature. So in trying to answer your question, it might pertain, but at the same time, how long ago was the business? What was traffic that was generated? What was development? What was the population? Things of that nature probably should also be thought about.
Okay. And then I think there was an application for this to be a jerky place. I think it was V-Hills. It's going to come in here, and I'm just kind of curious what happened there and what prevented that from coming in versus this, and what's the similarities or dissimilarities?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, I am familiar with that. I believe that was the first or second day I came on to help the Planning and Zoning Department a year and a half ago. But I wasn't working on it. I wasn't familiar enough with the project to know exactly what happened, other than they decided not, they meaning the business, I believe it was the business, decided to not move forward.
Okay.
But I'm not sure of the particulars.
Okay.
Yeah, and they currently, I believe, are located on Second in the county, just the other side, so. Mhm. Any other questions of Mr. Williams? Can we call up the applicant and Studio Southwest Architects, the representatives? If you will provide your name, the agency you're with, and your address, please.
Yes. Stephen Osborne, Studio Southwest Architects, 1721 Ridgecrest Avenue, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87108.
Stan Albright, I'm the Director of Finance and Operations at the school. I live out in Harris.
Great. Are there anything you would like to add to the report that Mr. Williams has provided?
I would like to provide, the county is actually requiring traffic analysis, so that is being taken care of. So even if it meets conditional use, it will meet the county with a traffic report. El Pueblo is being developed, and so they are requiring it. It was not a condition of a conditional use permit with you.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, if I could just, Madam Chair, if I could just speak on the traffic for the school. Our drop-off will be like from 8:15 to 8:30, so it's about 15 minutes. And then pickup will be from about 3:15 to 3:30 for 15 minutes. And after that, there's hardly any traffic coming in and out of the school.
What will be the population of the school?
We'll be about 250 to 300 students. We don't want to get any bigger than that. This will be our third location. We've been a state charter school now for 20 years. So we've gotten pretty good at this now. We're growing, and our waiting list for the school has got to the point of 800 students. So we're trying to start growing out into the community a little bit.
You said you were a state charter?
State charter school.
Okay, state charter.
Their primary campus is on Montana.
Yeah. Right across from the open space area there.
Okay. Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Can I ask that you keep the Yanomoto sign?
We're going to for sure.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add,
Please speak into the microphone.
when it served as a school previously, the queuing was much shorter. We are actually adding 25 vehicle queuing. So there's an undeveloped to the east of the site.
Right.
Sort of eroding. That's actually getting developed with a half basketball court and a parent drop and faculty parking. So we're increasing the queuing on site, which takes traffic off of El Pueblo.
Okay. Commissioner Edward, you look like you're.
Go ahead with,
Commissioner Baldwin.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on the comment that Commissioner Tagliapietro mentioned earlier in terms of having a looping flow. The schematic in the packet speaks to two-way entrance and exit out of the gates. Would you be comfortable and willing to accept a condition that had a loop flow so that it's in one gate, out the other?
I would, however, Bernalillo County is the AHJ for fire. They require 22 feet. So those are designed to the width that they need to protect the school from fire.
Right, so I think we're not concerned about a width for access of emergencies, it's just the flow going in one and out the other. Obviously, emergency vehicles have their own.
One
To
way.
go in the west gate, the furthest west
Yes,
gate, and
that's
then
correct.
exit. So your entrance for the school property would be the west gate.
That's correct.
The exit would be the easternmost gate.
That's correct.
Okay, that's
That's a question. It indicates two-way.
Oh, I
In
see.
the design.
Well, the width would be two-way. You could take two-way parking in, but it's not designed that
The
way.
width is not the issue,
Okay,
the flow is.
misunderstood.
Yeah, we'll make sure we don't want cars coming in and out both with kids and stuff. That makes total sense.
Thank you.
So we would like appropriate signage that would indicate that as well, so.
Yes.
Okay. Any
Both
other-
on the pavement and the gates.
Commissioner Haywood?
I've noticed that with the current situation, and until that intersection's upgraded at some distant point in the future, people come south on Second off Paseo and then turn right and whiz through that to change direction, because it's incredibly difficult to turn east
I've witnessed.
on El Pueblo.
Yep.
Until the intersection is reconfigured, how are you going to stop people? Can you stop people barreling through your property
So
to do that?
that's a great question. That's a Stan issue. I will say that the queuing area is actually protected. It's part of this. So PSFA requires a 6-foot high barrier. That's for all schools. And we're doing wrought iron, so it's permeable. You can see through it. But that secondary part, at some part of the day, could be locked up and then open back up. That front part, which you mentioned, is a drive-through turnaround. And I'm not sure how we solve that one.
Basically, we just have to have signage out there, and we do have a security guard. There'll be a security guard on staff that helps the students with all kinds of issues. So if it becomes a problem, we'll have him out there every so often addressing that issue.
I think landscaping could solve a lot of those problems. If there's plants there, they're not going to drive over them.
I think once we put a school up there and they see school, they won't want to be going in and out of the property as much.
They still did it with the other school there.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hoping.
Additional, Commissioner Martinez?
Just want to follow up on the beginning part with traffic, and children and education is the highest of all, because they're our future. But I'm grateful that I'm hearing, instead of us needing to, that the traffic study is being done, because I think that's one thing that we need to recognize. Traffic study is critical, and we don't have to because it's already placed, so I'm really grateful, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Great.
What would you anticipate as it relates to the traffic? You have to make an assumption, the trade area from which you're drawing the students, and what percentage of these students you anticipate coming from a distance which they would not impact the traffic?
That's a Stan question.
We get students from 30, I think it's 33 zip codes right now. We have a huge waiting list. So that's a hard question. I'm not really sure how to address that. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to think of how that would.
I mean, is it within the purview, is it within the purview in the school that you assign people to certain campuses based upon?
Not really, because our main campus right now on Montano is going to be pre-K to 5th grade or 6th grade, depending on the students and how mature they are, basically. And then this campus would be our mid-school campus. Okay. Then we have another campus up on Carmel, that's our pre-KK class. So it just depends on the population and how our teachers and our administrators decide which group of kids are ready to go with which group of kids. Because in Montessori, it's just not by grade 1, 2, 3, 4, they're mixed grades. So it's, our younger kids are 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade together in one class. So it just depends on how that flows that year and that group of kids are coming through. So since COVID, we've had to really make some adjustments based on their maturity and how they're reacting to things and just emotionally. So it just depends.
And then,
Does that help?
yeah, and I have one last question, because this is considered our gateway district. This is where people are coming into the village. Is that a fair statement? I'd love it to be like a great welcome to our community. I mean, are you going to be doing anything with the landscaping to, I mean, there's a lot of places around New Mexico and a lot in Albuquerque where it's a moonscape. It's
If
uninspiring.
you've seen our campus on Montano, it's beautiful. It's got grass and trees, and I've been given the directive by the executive director and the board to make sure it's beautiful. That's first and foremost. Every meeting we have, it has to be beautiful. So it will have landscaping in the whole 9 yards.
And the nursery sign we intend to keep, and maybe somehow it becomes a new Montessori sign, but that structure on the corner, the intent is to remain.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. With that, let's ask, is there anyone in the audience wanting to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone in the audience wanting to speak in opposition? Do we have anybody online? No. Okay. With that, we'll close the input and go on to the commissioner's discussion. And first, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve CU 2501.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We're open now for commissioners' discussion.
I would like to make sure that we, in finalizing our motion and vote, that we include the staff findings. And I'd also like to recommend a condition reflecting Commissioner Talia-Pietro's comments, that the condition would be that the west gate to the campus is the entrance to the property, and that the eastern gate is the exit to the property, which should, based on the schematic, flow, while not creating any issues related to the width of the travel lanes. Those obviously are literally driven by emergency access and the county.
Okay.
I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, and I think your idea, makes a lot of sense, but I'm not a traffic engineer. I wouldn't want to hamstring these guys into a traffic study that says something different than what we are saying that the traffic flow needs to be. And so I'd like to somehow respect what your wishes are, but not make a demand on them on this condition that it kind of undermines a traffic study that might recommend by a traffic engineer to do something better.
Maybe we could put it in there as a condition if the traffic study says different, then it's different.
So because then it's going to send these guys back to the drawing board too many times.
And I do understand what you're saying, Commissioner Edward. I was formerly on the TPTG, part of Mr. Cog, which is the Transportation Commission, and there is a requirement based upon the speed of the roadway that it's adjacent to and combines what the footage from any ingress and egress are. So there could be something that would come up. So I do recognize that your comment, we may need to give that leeway.
And I was trying to take it further from Second and El Pueblo, the furthest west, away from the crazy stuff that goes on in Second and El Pueblo.
So
So I would like to make an amendment to the motion. Is there information you would like to impart before I make an amendment?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Baldwin, or Madam Chair and Commissioners, Attorney Chappell and I were just talking. Understand the concern for designating points of ingress, egress, understand trying to get as far away from the intersection, as well as Commissioner Edwards' consideration. So let me just throw this out there, and then you can talk about this. But as Commissioner Baldwin mentioned, designating the western entrance egress point as being the in portion and the east being the out, with signs to designate that 18 by 24 inches, at least 18 by 24 inches posted. I'm just suggesting at 4 feet in height. And then provided that those points of ingress and egress are dedicated as such, as long as it's not contrary to a future traffic study that would be reviewed, if the commission's comfortable with that, that would be reviewed by Planning Commission staff. So worst case scenario, we tell them come in at the west and go out at the east, and then 2 years from now, or a year and a half, I don't know how long it will take, they come back, the school comes back and says, wait a minute, the county says we need to do something different because the way we're arranging our access to the public rights of way, it's inconsistent with the study that we've done. Then at that point, theoretically, we could remove that condition or relinquish that condition from the approval.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Commissioner Baldwin, would you like to? Yes.
You know I would.
Please update your motion.
No, I would like to offer an amendment to the motion on the floor that would include the staff findings as well as a condition of approval to designate the west egress gate of the project as an ingress and the east gate as the exit, with appropriate signage, so long as it is not contrary to the required traffic study.
Is that a friendly amendment? Since I believe Commissioner Martinez made the original motion?
He made the,
No.
You did.
She did it.
I made it.
You made the original.
Okay.
Okay, I'm losing.
I accept it.
You accept it, great, okay.
And I accept it.
So, the maker and the seconder have both accepted as the friendly amendment. Okay, further discussion. Are we ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Are we calling the question? Okay. So, this is roll call vote. Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez,
Yes.
Commissioner Edward,
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Teckley-Petra,
Yes.
Commissioner Haywood,
Yes.
Commissioner Homan, yes. Congratulations. You have, we have approved your request. So at this point, CU 2501 hearing has formally closed. Okay, we go on to old business, which I believe we've just got a report. Is that report from you, Mr. Williams?
Madam Chair, yes, thank you very much. So Commissioner will remember last month during your informal discussion, there were some questions about properties on, specific about landscaping for properties that are on 4th Street. Work has been done, some research has been done. One property was 7108 4th Street Northwest. It was I was initially informed that existing staff has historically interpreted these types of operations being temporary in nature. They were exempt from the landscaping standards. I did have some additional questions that came up, so we're still working on that one. I need to meet with the administrator and discuss how we will handle that. The second property was at 7324 4th Street Northwest. Have been in contact with the property owner. That also has revealed additional details that we need to address. So I'm here to report that we're still working on both of these properties, and we'll keep the commission apprised of ultimately of what's happened and when they come into compliance.
Can I interrupt you? You gave the addresses, but can you give the trade name or the common name?
7108 4th Street was Rosales Produce, and the 7324 was the 411 Equipment business.
Oh, okay.
So you will give us more?
We will give you more. We're still working on this. I'm sure, as the commission knows, we currently don't have a code enforcement officer, and so the administrator and I
are wearing a lot of hats.
As he spins the plates and I juggle, we'll get to a point where we're able to provide the commission with exact detail as to how we're moving forward. But again, we are still working on both of these.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, there's no other old business and there is no new business, so we will move on to Commissioner's informal discussion. Commissioner Barrow.
Pass.
Commissioner Martinez.
I wanted to ask you guys if, and I respect what you guys are talking about with TAF, and one of the questions that we just went around in circles with is a brand new one where we had the ability, because it was a different type of school, with actually out of village people to be able to do traffic studies, et cetera. So what does a village have the ability to do in reference to traffic and lights and the specific things that they brought up in relations to TAF? Yes, sir, yes. What does the village have the ability to, or is it 100% APS and they have to go to APS and only APS and PNM? Or does the village have the ability to negotiate and help them out in their journey?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Martinez, the difference between what we just went through with this charter school And what's true of that particular school is that the APS actually owns this site. The one we just dealt with was private property, so the village has all of the control of that as they would in any other site. The village has the right to do certain controls over other public entities that own property within the village, except the federal government. But that is very limited. In other words, they don't necessarily have to comply with all of our ordinances. One of the things that was discussed when they were talking about changing it is whether or not we could enforce certain traffic regulations because they use the streets to get to the site. The problem is that you cannot, at this point, we haven't got the ability to say you can only have 20 cars down this street per hour. That's not something in our regulations, the ordinances, or any of the control. So the answer is pretty limited, but I think that with going to APS and the village actually going to APS to try to get the dark sky thing imposed, the screening walls and so forth, we may have some success in that. But we're pretty limited because it's another governmental entity.
Thank you. And I hope you guys go to PNM because I think that you heard PNM is your light situation. Secondly, I think that one of the things that we have, and I agree with you because I have been pushing it for already 5 months, the re-evaluating of the zoning and what we can and cannot do. I had a talk with Mr. Williams earlier, and it looks like they are on board. Unfortunately, it looks like the transition of so many things that have existed in the last 4 months is a time frame that I think that we have to be a little patient with. But I'm hearing that Mr. Williams is on board, and I think that it is a process that we have to go with open meetings, et cetera. And Makita was supposed to, and I related it to him, to educate us and guide us through. But I think Mr. Williams is on board and has expressed that he is going to look in that direction and help us in that new journey that we tried to start 4 months ago, but we will try to start up, soon. APS traffic. And I think with that zoning change, I think what we have to do is really look at the landscaping. One of the things that I feel very strong about is 4th Street is our, what would you say, our champion of people driving through, and the lack of or the ugliness of landscaping on that really shows on the village itself. So I think that when it comes time to reevaluate the zoning, I think landscaping is a process that we have to kind of look at. And that's it for me.
Okay. Commissioner Edward.
Good points, you guys. So Mr. Barrow, are we allowed to tighten the rules on how we can govern APS school campuses in terms of zoning and other guidelines, or are we at the edge of the envelope?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Edward, we can perhaps look at some options. The problem is one of a conflict between governmental entities. And the school, Albuquerque Public School, is in that classification. So we run into the same problem with doing something with the APS sites is we would have, if the county owns property within the village and we try to control the property, the county property, there are all kinds of intergovernment problems to do that. There's some general cases that say the government entities, except the federal government, must comply with the zoning ordinances of the municipality or the county or whomever is there, but there are many limitations on that. So rather than try to get into that and come up with a legal battle, I think it's much more advantageous to go back to the table with APS and say, look, you did this, we didn't like it, but here's what we're going to do. There was a push to try to maybe change that in the legislature, but I don't think anybody to sponsor a bill in that regard.
So is there any room left at the end of the rope for us to do anything?
I believe we can put some pressure for them just to comply with the dark skies ordinance and those kind of things, which are generally public safety and public convenience. But I don't think that what we have today, unless we look at specific issues that I could research, that we have a direct path to enforce those kind of things against against APS.
Okay. It's quite the dilemma that, is it Sanchez? Yes. That you brought up, and I've brought it up before. When I first joined this commission, I was excited that somebody would come in here and have enough courtesy and stand-upness, if that could be a word, to say, hey, they would like to seek a variance for otherwise, which they're going to do under the guise of darkness anyway. And putting a temporary structure in, putting an addition on the back of the house, nobody knows about it. And so how do we invite people to come in here and do things and not shut them down so hard that they're just going to do it anyway and not come in here and ask for permission? And I guess that's a thing that P&Z grapples with all the time within every municipality. I think for us, my request would be is we need to get a zoning code enforcement officer in here right away, because it's just going to get worse. If more of the laws could basically just be enforced, we wouldn't have to do the things that we do. And they're just flat out not enforced. I don't know if it's the bro deal. I don't know if it's drinking too much coffee or what. But the last guy, clearly you could drive around and see things were looking different in the village. And I wish that gentleman was back here. What is the prospect that we're going to have a code enforcement officer anytime soon?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, did I just hear you volunteer to become our code enforcement officer?
Sure, I'll take that signing bonus.
Generally, Madam Chair, Commissioner Edward, seriously, I know that the village is actively working to try and fill that role. You know, I don't want to speak for Michelle, but she takes the majority of the phone calls for people that have questions, some which turn out to be legitimate, or some which turn out to be an actual violation, and in other situations, they don't. But certainly, the expectation from the community, from the commission, and from the administration to go out and take a look at those to confirm compliance is certainly understood. That being said, I know that, again, I don't want to speak for the administrator, but I know that he is working with the clerk to try and get applicants to apply. That being said, and being completely serious, if you or any of the other commissioners are aware of somebody that would be interested, that would be a good fit, if you could help us to let them know about that, or tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Having lived several years in the code enforcement realm, it's not an easy job, and you've got to be able to work with people. You've got to be able to put your foot down when you need to put your foot down, but you have to be reasonable in your approach as well. So all that being said, we're working to try to fill the position. It's a difficult position to fill, but I can promise you no complaint goes uninvestigated. There may be some difficulty in determining the veracity of the complaint. You know, oh, they're constantly, you know, throwing a party at that house, or whatever the complaint may be. If we go by 3 or 4 times and we don't see them throwing a party every time, it's not that we didn't do anything, it's just that we didn't catch them in the act, which, because these are misdemeanor offenses, the village would have to do. So again, in all seriousness, if you all are aware of people that are interested, or you know somebody that's tired of working for Bernalillo County or Rio Rancho and wants to come work in the wonderful village of Los Ranchos and do code enforcement, I'm sure we would be more than happy to speak with them about that.
Is it part-time, full-time?
My understanding is that it's a full-time position. They're trying to cobble together, different duties because there are many needs. There's not just a code enforcement need here in the village. There are many needs. But again, I would anticipate that if we found somebody with the skill set that would help us or help the village, that we would work with them to try and plug them in whatever capacity at whatever level was appropriate.
So you could take 2 part-time people.
Well, again, we'd have to check with the clerk to see what the advertisement is, but there are positions that are available, one of them being code enforcement. And if somebody comes to the table with other skills, again, I would imagine we would be able to utilize them accordingly. So 30 hours doing code enforcement and 10 hours washing windows, if you've got those skills, I'm sure we could put them to good use.
And the last thing I want to say is, Brandon, you've been great. You've been here through, I think, 3 planning and zoning directors, is that right?
2.
2. And
Feels like 3, but it's just.
losing code enforcement, and I appreciate your spirit. Every time I've come in, it's a can-do sort of a way, and I think that evokes for a great institution, so I appreciate and you
Thank you,
bring that here
Commissioner.
to this table, too.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Baldwin?
I'll pass.
Okay. Commissioner Tagliapetra?
Okay. Have a question. How are people living in the Palindrome project now? The Board of Trustees hasn't heard it. Can they have their CO yet?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, my understanding is, and I have not been part of those discussions, but the county has issued, they call it the certificate of completion, or also known as certificate of occupancy, that the county has given their approval, and based on that, because those tracks, or because one of those tracks has met from a construction, from a building code standpoint, has checked all the boxes from the county checklist. The county, which is part of the process, has issued the certificate of completion, and based upon that, the Palindrome folks have begun letting people occupy the building.
Okay. I have more from.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Commissioner Tagliapietro, the village has researched the issue under the development agreement, whatever, and has written a nicely but firm worded letter to the county requesting that the certificate of completion be revoked until such time as Palindrome completes its process of getting the plat and the site plan approved through the village. So we've not had a response from that, but the county does have that communication.
I think they're going to ignore us. Thank you. Thank you all, actually. Thank you, Brennan, for everything.
Commissioner Haywood?
The lady that lives on 4th Street. I and numerous other people have phoned and been told that the village has no jurisdiction because she meets all of the requirements of leaving her alone. And I just find it remarkable that an entire community of people can be held hostage by one. I understand, and I'm very sympathetic to the fact that she does have rights, and we can't just kidnap her and move her. But I'm also quite concerned that an entire community can be held hostage by one individual.
There's
So
two
I
now.
would just like,
There's 2 now.
I would just like some clarification as to why that is the case.
Oh, boy, so.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Haywood, if you want me to respond to that. The situation is that the village now has an ordinance that deals with vagrancy. That at one time would settle those kind of things. The court decisions have said that that test is not constitutional. So we're in the process of drafting a homeless ordinance, which has been approved and enforced in the city of Portland, Oregon now, copying some others. So we're trying to put an ordinance on the books that give us the ability to enforce that. It's a complicated process because of conditions of the people and a lot of things, but until about 6 months ago, those kind of ordinances were thought to be unenforceable, but the courts have now said in that case they are, so we're trying to tailor an ordinance.
So, Mr. Chappell, that's a time, place, and manner ordinance that's being, I'm just confirming that it would be a time, place, and manner ordinance that is being developed.
That is correct. Creating an ordinance that complies with the recent court rulings as control of that.
While I know we all don't like our village showcasing, if you will, homeless camping out right there, right on our main corridor, we as a community have made it easy for those individuals, and please don't take it that I'm being heartless, because I do have compassion for the situation that these individuals are in. But as long as people continue to go over and deliver food, drink, I've seen them bring umbrellas, additional cushions, temporary tents, I mean, you name it. I've seen them come over and deliver, thinking that they're doing the right thing for the individual. I've seen the fire department go over, checking on the individuals, one in particular, the one that you mentioned, Commissioner Haywood, and trying to convince her to move to a more secure location, offering her transportation, but she, refuses. So it's difficult, because I think it tugs at all of our heartstrings about trying to help somebody in need, but at the same time, what do we do?
Can I follow up with something?
Yes, you can, please.
I would like to follow up on that. So when we had the neighborhood watch meeting here, I actually spoke with her brother. It's an extremely, extremely sad situation. She's been on drugs for years. She's lost her home. She's lost her daughter. She's now lost both of her vehicles. Her drug dealer comes to her on the corner. I cried with her brother that night because it was so disturbing. And now we have a second homeless person further up the road in front of the Jerky Strip Mall, and he camps out on the bench, or he goes over and sleeps in the bushes there. I pray that we do something, because this is not, it's not humane. This is just not humane. And we're not doing it to her, but it's not, we just can't let her stay there. Or the guy that's up the street now, it's a guy further up the street. But her brother also is a very nice man, and he's upset too.
Okay, my next comment is, do you have something?
I did, a little bit. I won't belabor this, but in the I'll bring this to a personal level in just a second. In the 1970s, various court cases said that you cannot require people to accept treatment, right to deny treatment. Okay, and so basically the insane asylums emptied out onto the street, and there were efforts to set up halfway houses, and the funding was denied. This was in the 70s, early 70s. Forward, forward, forward. We've had some court cases, we've had some other things, and it's just an untenable situation, so I'll bring it to a more personal level. I tried to convince the lady in front of the bank that I could take her someplace for the night, and I had 2 or 3 places in mind. She refused. I tried again another time. She refused. So it's a sad situation but we're caught between a rock and a hard place in a lot of cases. So I appreciate what Attorney Chappell is trying to get done for us in the village. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll continue. What's the situation with the permanent planning and zoning director? Mr. Avila?
The job is posted for, we are searching for a permanent director. Meantime, staff is lending hand to make sure that the operations continue.
Have we gone beyond New Mexico in our search for an individual, or are we limiting it just to New Mexico?
No, it's not limited to just New Mexico.
Okay. You know, we had previously, it's been a number of months ago, we talked about starting a Village Vision article that would be perpetual, that would describe the requirements for an addition, for doing those things around your house, and what was, when you needed a permit and when you didn't. I don't know what the situation has ever come of that. Have any of you heard of that? And if not, Mr. Avila, once again, I'm throwing that back to you.
There's not a Village Vision article on that. And is this a planning and zoning work study and take it forward, or are you asking staff to provide information from the ordinance and aid in that direction?
Chair, there actually was an article. It was about 5 months after we'd asked for it to happen, because we were trying to get last summer's construction season, and I think it actually was in maybe the end of the summer article, and it was the same one that had the sort of reminder to use the village code in your contractors and services so that we reduced leakage. Because I remember very specifically that both of those articles were in that edition, and I will let you know which one it is, because I think I have all of them somewhere squirreled away. But that was very much appreciated. We have done it once, doesn't mean it shouldn't be dusted off and updated a little bit, because again, anytime we come into a construction season and people start thinking about the garden shed, the additions, all those things, it's a good reminder.
That would be a great idea, and perhaps we could add a kind of a Q&A with it to expand it some.
What's referred to there is an article that was on a particular subject at the time, but if this is going to be an ongoing, regular publication, what is the items that you want to have highlighted, that sort of thing, unless you are just saying, go ahead and pick a subject and put it out there. Is there something that the board sees as, or the commission sees as something that needs to come forward on a seasonal basis or otherwise? If it's going to be a regular article, regular section in the magazine.
I would suggest it be a regular section, and perhaps next month in our old business section, maybe we can add some discussion on that, so we can come up with some topics that we can give back to. At this point, it would be Mr. Williams as well as Mr. Avila. So,
the thing that I can add to that is I think that what they need is they need somebody to write the article. And
yes,
so how are we going to get to that? Because I think it's important, but the question here is who are we going to be able to get on board to be able to do that? Because once we get somebody, we can run with whatever subject, let them do it and hand it in, and they'll do it all the time. It's just that they need a article person.
Drafter. Okay, well, let's all think about that and include that in our discussion next month.
Can I ask a quick question? To both John and to Brennan, you guys have come from different municipalities. Based upon what you see here, do we maintain staffing at levels that is appropriate if we were fully staffed, such that the position itself doesn't lead to burnout? Because I have a hard time, how do you go through 3 planning directors in 3 years? How do you not keep a code enforcement officer? I mean, are we at staffing levels? Are we paying people enough that they're even wanting to apply? I mean, we can go out of state all we want. People in other states get paid more than they do here. I don't think they're gonna come running here. I mean, have we had somebody from a conceptual standpoint say, do we pay enough? And do we pay enough based upon the amount of work that they have to do? And are they properly supported?
So is there many factors that are being considered? If you are enforcing code, and there perhaps isn't a straight way, as in a direct way to make sure that your enforcement then comes through in the courts and comes out with a result, and maybe you're going through a lot of cases, that might be a different scenario for you than when you were somewhere else where you had a lot of support and you know, perhaps went to the court and had more involved cases. So it's going to be a different atmosphere. So that right there is, you know, just considering one of the factors in somebody saying, am I getting all I can out of this? As far as salaries go, we're competitive. And, you know, I guess we can go ahead and say, as far as staffing levels, I can tell you, comparable sized as far as items coming before the planning zoning department were run with less people. But, you know, right now, we're just getting a grasp of how many items there are that come before planning and zoning. So I would say that, you know, the experience has been, we need more people than we have right now. And have that support. We have a support like Brendan Williams that has that experience and can manage, you know, from his vast experience in many cases. That support is going to help anybody coming in. So, you know, just being able to have that is a plus for anybody coming in.
What is the training ground for a code enforcement officer? I mean, is it just public administration? Is it construction background? Where would be the best avenue?
Both of those, you know, are good backgrounds. If they can read the rules, follow the rules, enforce the rules, be able to deal with the public on a transactional level and not, you know, become emotionally involved or otherwise in dealing with this. They have the right constitution and the right work ethic. They're going to be able to handle code enforcement.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we're concluding our meeting.
Madam Chair, can I butt in real quick? I apologize for the interruption. Just for the commission, just so you're aware, next month is March. Annually at our March meeting, we do our election of officers. So that will be on the agenda for next month.
Great.
Thank you.
And with that, we will conclude the February 11th Planning and Zoning Commissioner meeting. Sure you can.
Well, and don't do you?
Yeah. Is there a motion to adjourn? I do. Second, anybody?
Yes, please.
All right. We're past
By
that, I'm sorry for
acclamation.
public input.
Yay.
We've got to conclude. So we're concluding the February 11th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at, looks like 8:09. Yeah. Informally,